Hare Krishna, devotees. Welcome to our 32nd evening program on Brihad Bhagavatamrita of Srila Sanatana Goswami. And we are near the end of the 5th chapter of the first part. And here we are. We are in Dwarika. We are in Dwarika with the Yadus, Vasudev, Devaki, and so many other of Krishna's close associates. And Narada Muni has been telling them how they are the ones who have got the real mercy of Lord Krishna, the greatest recipients of the mercy of the Lord. And they have been saying, no, not really, not us. But if you want to know who has got the mercy, it is Uddhava. Uddhava. So we're just entering into this section here where the Yadus glorify Uddhava as the great recipient of Lord Krishna's mercy. So let us begin with our prayers. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarne Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare. Vanchkalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Brihad Bhagavatamrita ki jai. Srila Sanatana Goswami ki jai. Gaur Premanande. Haribol, Haribol. All right, yes, so let us hear the glories of Uddhava. This is now verse 116. So the Yadus are speaking. But among us, blessed Uddhava has received Krishna's greatest mercy. That exalted soul is Lord Yadavendra's advisor, his disciple, his servant, and his extremely dear friend. Yes. So, the thing is that they had been saying that they just don't have the mercy. That's what they've been saying, that they just don't have the mercy. But now the thing is, they have to admit that one of them does have the mercy. And that's Uddhava, because he's one of the Yadus. He's one of the Yadus. And because they're very respectful towards Narada as a very great devotee, very, very great devotee, and because Narada has confirmed that they have the mercy, so they feel they cannot really deny it. They cannot completely deny it, at least. So, all right, then they say, all right, so one of us has the mercy, and that is Uddhava. So, yes, in doing this, they're doing a few things, actually. One of them is by glorifying him, they are minimizing their own glories. This is a clever devotee trick. And others have done similar things over, in the different places we've visited. Other of the great devotees that Narada has approached, they've also tried to distract the attention from themselves by encouraging that attention be focused on someone else. Yeah. Because they're such devotees. They're just such incredible devotees that they just embody humility. They're just totally absorbed in humility. And you can't really do anything about it. Yeah, you can't. It's very hard to get them to admit that all right, we're special. Yeah. So this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to minimize their glories by distracting Narada from them and getting him to focus on Uddhava, and then they won't have to worry about, oh my gosh, you're going to glorify us. Oh no, you can't do that. Yes. So they all, the princes at least, they all advise Krishna. They're involved in the meeting house and all the governmental dealings and so on and so forth. But they all know that no one gives advice like Uddhava. And when Uddhava gives advice, then Krishna listens. Krishna listens. Everybody listens. I mean, yeah, when Uddhava gives advice, Krishna listens, everyone listens. Okay. So we continue on. Sometimes the Lord abandons us to go on a journey. This gives us such distress that even when we see him again, the pain does not go away. This is an interesting point, that these great devotees, in fact, it's going to be discussed in the next in the following couple of chapters, basically like that, how Krishna didn't want to go back to Vrindavan because he was feeling that it would increase the hopes of the Brijbasis, make them more hopeful, so that when he left again, which he would inevitably do, then, because their hopes were even higher than before, then they would feel let down so much. So therefore he decided best not to go there. Yeah. So the Yadus in Dwarika, they have a similar experience. When the Lord goes away, that they feel so much separation. It's just totally out of this world. But the separation is so great that when they do actually see him again, then they still remember that pain of separation. It haunts them. They can't get free of it. And the pain doesn't go away. Verse 118, we cannot be sure when he might go somewhere else. But Uddhava is always by his side, serving Lord Krishna, his master, and residing with him. Yes, in other words, we don't know when Krishna is going to go somewhere or do something, whatever it may be. We don't know really what Krishna's program is, but Uddhava, who's always right next to the Lord, Uddhava knows. Sometimes the Lord, the personality of Godhead, sends Uddhava on missions on which the Lord himself should go. For example, the Lord sent him to gain the release of Samba, whom the Kauravas had taken captive. Yes, so actually Krishna has sent Uddhava on various missions, a number of special missions. He sent Uddhava to Gokula, where Uddhava spoke Krishna's message to the gopis, or messages to the gopis, as described in Srimad Bhagavatam. He sent him to Hastinapur to negotiate, and other places. And when Samba, one of Krishna's sons, wanted to elope, if you know what I mean, run away with the girl and marry her without the permission of her parents, in Vedic terminology, an elopement. The boy and girl just run off together. An elopement is called a Rakshasa wedding. And it's considered actually a type of wedding. Not just sort of an unofficial approach to getting married, but an actual wedding ceremony, the kidnapping. So Samba wanted to elope with Duryodhana's daughter, and he was captured by Bhishma, Duryodhana, and different members of the Kaurava army. So Uddhava had to go and negotiate and speak to them and make arrangements and pacify them and cajole them, as we say, and joke with them, make them laugh and make them think it's not so serious. And eventually Uddhava arranged the release of Samba. Yeah. Now, Krishna sent, so anyway. Uddhava is always in Krishna's association. But when Uddhava was sent out on these different missions to rescue or console the Lord's dear devotees, Uddhava felt more satisfaction than when he was staying with Krishna. You know, this is advanced Krishna consciousness when you understand the nectar is in serving. The nectar is not necessarily in physical proximity. Of course, physical proximity is nice, but when there's physical proximity and there's no service, it's just not the same at all. The real essence of the nectar is in the service. Yeah. So Uddhava, he likes serving, and particularly on these special strategic missions. 120. Uddhava stays alone with Krishna when the Lord playfully enjoys his meals. So he is the only person who can always obtain the Lord's Mahaprasad remnants. That's a good arrangement, isn't it? I remember when I was young in Bhaktivedanta Manor in the sort of early to mid 70s, early to mid. Prabhupada would be in his rooms and we would be waiting outside for the Mahaprasadam to come out. Oh, yes. And one of the favorite items was the skin of the oranges, because Prabhupada would have the oranges cut up in pieces with the skin on, and he'd suck the juice out. So we would get the skins, and we'd eat the skins. Verse 121. With great pleasure, Uddhava massages his master's lotus feet and then happily falls asleep with the Lord's feet on his lap. What can you say? This is just super, super high level nectar. Just super high level nectar. 122, when the Lord goes out for confidential pleasures, Uddhava sometimes goes with him. And when Uddhava serves as the Lord's minister in this assembly hall, his precious gems of advice and his flood of witty and charming comments earn abundant praise from Sri Hari. They also delight all of us and fulfill all our desires. And an example of this, of the Lord going out for some special confidential pastimes, of special transcendental enjoyment, then at least sometimes Uddhava goes with him. And an example of that is when Lord Krishna went to meet Kubja in Mathura, just after the killing of Kamsa. Then Krishna met Kubja, and later on, the same day, went to visit her at home. 123. What can be said of his continuous good fortune? Since childhood, he has been so absorbed in the taste of serving his master's lotus feet that foolish people call him a madman. Yes. So, this is the thing. Uddhava is such an elevated devotee. Sometimes he goes into ecstatic trances and he just loses contact with the external situation, because he's just so absorbed internally in remembering Krishna and thinking of Krishna's pastimes. So sometimes foolish people who don't understand the nectar of pure devotional service on the level of prema, they see him just disconnected from whatever the situation is around him and talking about what he is seeing internally. Internally, he's seeing Krishna's pastimes going on. And he's talking about that, what he's seeing internally, which has nothing to do with the external situation. And so people think he's just mad. He's just talking some rubbish. He's lost in some crazy world. But actually, he's sort of lost, you could say, but in this incredible world of Krishna in Goloka, in his relationships with his dearest devotees. 124. Just see how amazing is his great eagerness to surrender always at the lotus feet of Lord Madhava. He has even foregone the normal bodily features of a human being and instead assumed a transcendental body closely resembling that of Sri Hari. Yes. So the thing is, what this means is that it's referring to how Uddhava, when he was born, because from his previous life, he was a pure devotee of the Lord on the level of Krishna prema, an eternal associate of the Lord, and was just always totally in remembrance of the Lord in the previous life. So when he was born in this life, being so fully absorbed in Krishna, he was born with a bluish body. The body of Uddhava is quite similar. The color, at least, is quite similar to that of Krishna. And therefore, when, for example, Uddhava went to take the messages of Krishna to the gopis at Nandagram, initially when they saw him, they had to just think, now what's going on? Is it Krishna? Because the color is the same, but they looked a little more closely and they saw, no. He doesn't have exactly the incredible beauty of Krishna, although he looks very similar and the bodily color is basically the same. 125. Uddhava's body is more beautiful than even Sri Pradyumna's, and Uddhava is even more dear to Krishna than Pradyumna is to Krishna. When bedecked with jewels, pearl necklaces, yellow silk dress, forest flower garlands, makara-shaped earrings, and other ornaments, Uddhava delights us, and we mistake him for the son of Devaki himself. No one attracts the hearts of Krishna's devotees more than Uddhava. Yes. So therefore Uddhava, when Krishna would go away sometimes from Dwarika, and on those occasions, well, at least when Uddhava did not go with him, then the Yadus, of course, when Krishna went, they'd be feeling tremendous separation, great separation. But when they were having those feelings of separation, they go and look at Uddhava or spend a little time with Uddhava, and they'd be reminded of Krishna, and there would be some feeling as if they're in the company of Krishna, like that. Yes. So in this way, they'd get relief from their pain of separation. So, Uddhava, he would get a special garland from Krishna. It's a garland called Vanyashrak, a garland strung from wild forest flowers, often long enough to touch the wearer's feet. Sure. Yeah, Krishna would give him his garlands regularly. Then Uddhava would also get jewelry from Krishna. Krishna would give Uddhava sometimes his own Kaustubha gem. Yes. Which in Vaikuntha no one but the Lord wears. And various other things, all sorts of things, remnants, some sandalwood paste, turbans and other headgears and other ornaments and jewelry. Yes. So, and then it's mentioned when the Yadavas would see Uddhava from a distance, they often thought he was Krishna. Just like we mentioned, the gopis at Nandagram, they saw Uddhava coming and they thought, wow, is this Krishna? But of course, when he got closer, they saw he wasn't. So the Yadavas also, when Uddhava was coming from a distance, they'd think, this looks like Krishna. Yes. And of course, they would realize their mistake when Uddhava got closer, but still they would feel the same sort of satisfaction on seeing Uddhava as they would from seeing Krishna. If not exactly the same, but something very much related. Yes. So, verse 126, Sri Parikshit said, "Dear mother, after hearing these and other exalted glories of Uddhava, Narada Muni, overjoyed, became eager to go to Uddhava's house." Okay, so now Narada wants to go. He wants to go to Uddhava's house. Verse 127, showing various symptoms of ecstasy, Narada stood up, ready to set off in that direction. Noting this, King Ugrasena spoke. Ugrasena was ruling. Krishna was not ruling, actually. He was one of the senior princes, but he was not ruling. Ugrasena was ruling. And so Krishna officially was more like a minister. Yes. So Narada stands up. He's ready to go. He's about to go. And let's have darshan of Uddhava and meet Uddhava. And having heard all these amazing descriptions of Uddhava, just such beautiful descriptions of Uddhava, Narada was manifesting different symptoms of ecstasy, like perspiration, trembling, standing of the hair on his limbs, those hairs standing on end. So he was obviously moved by impulses of spontaneous love. And so if you want to stop him, only transcendental arguments would be able to change his mind. Verse 128. Sriman Ugrasena told Narada, "My lord, it is said that without Krishna's order, Uddhava never leaves Lord Krishna's presence, even for a moment." 129. In contrast, despite my begging to stay in Krishna's company, I never obtain that blessing. I am deprived of that achievement because of my degraded occupation of protecting the kingdom. So this is Ugrasena. Uddhava gets the special mercy. He's always with Krishna. But Ugrasena says that, I've been asking Krishna if I can spend time with him, but because I'm so caught up as the king, therefore, I just never get this blessing of spending time like that with Krishna. So in other words, to be the king, he's feeling this is just a handicap. Nowadays, people want to become the president, prime minister, or there's still a few kings left. And they think, when we get this, it'll be our lucky day, and it's just going to be fantastic. But Ugrasena, who is the king and extremely opulent, he's feeling this is all just degradation. This is my misfortune, my bad fortune, that I don't get to spend so much time with Krishna because I have to deal with being the king of the kingdom. Yes. Actually the fact is that Ugrasena got the kingdom by Krishna's mercy, by Krishna's arrangement. After Kamsa was killed, then Ugrasena was placed on the throne by Krishna. But even though it's it's a blessing from Krishna, but still Ugrasena feels it's a really mixed blessing. Mixed blessing means good and bad, but in his case he feels it's mainly bad. I'm stuck with this, having to do all these different things, ruling, and I can't get to associate with Krishna. Yes. So, to make Ugrasena accept the throne, Krishna had resorted to duplicity. He had asked Ugrasena to watch after Mathura because the kingdom needed to be guarded against certain threats while the Lord was traveling elsewhere. However, in fact, those threats did not exist. Yes. And there's an example given here in the purport. We read in Harivamsa, which is an Upa Purana, a secondary Purana, that during Rukmini's Swayamvar, Lord Krishna told Ugrasena, "O tiger among kings, please stay here with my brother. There are many warriors who externally follow the rules of Scripture, but whose intelligence is perverted. When these kings find the city vacant, with no ruler in place, they will attack it and impose terror." To which Ugrasena replied, "Without your presence, none of us citizens can live peacefully in the city or its outlying districts, just as women cannot live happily without their husbands. Dear son, we all consider you our master. We depend on the shelter of your mighty arms. Therefore, O Creator of our honor, we fear no earthly kings, nor even Indra, the king of heaven. Wherever you go to find victory in battle, O first and best of the Yadus, you should please take us with you." This is the mood of Ugrasena. Yes. But still, he does what Krishna says. So, okay. Ugrasena is now going to continue. Here he is in verse 130. He tells Narada, "I delight in only one real honor, being able to carry out Krishna's order. But the false honor he shows me simply torments me and leaves me feeling cheated." So he's a devotee. So his only happiness is in serving Krishna, doing what Krishna wants him to do, which is the case ultimately for any serious devotee. Yeah. But Krishna cheats him, means that Krishna approaches Ugrasena as a subordinate and praises him as if Ugrasena is senior. "You are the noble king of the Yadus. You are our grandfather. the pride of the Aryan race, sitting on your lion throne, please tell us what service we should do for you. Receiving such respect from Krishna greatly embarrasses Ugrasena. So in Harivamsa, there's a description of Krishna entering Dwarika after being anointed as the King of Kings. Coming down from his chariot at the city's gate, Krishna saw Ugrasena standing to receive him. And then Krishna told Ugrasena, yes. So Krishna tells Ugrasena, because I officially anointed you king of Mathura, it is improper for you to act in a contrary way. You should not present me these offerings of Arghya, Achaman, and Padya waters, dear king. That is my heartfelt wish. So Ugrasena, of course, he's a devotee. He wants to honor Krishna and offer these nice things to Krishna for Krishna's pleasure. But Krishna cheats him by saying that you're on a higher level than me. So, you can't offer someone lower than you all these nice things. So please stop it. Yes. So to Ugrasena then, these different events, different things like this, which have happened in his experiences of associating with Krishna, to him they are proof that he is certainly not a fortunate recipient of Krishna's mercy. And, 131. No other devotee of the Lord is ever cheated like this. But as for Uddhava, he enjoys the greatest happiness, privileged to stay always by Krishna's side. He is never deprived of Krishna's association. Ugrasena feels, I'm just not getting enough association. It's just not fair. So Ugrasena concludes, and this is the last verse of the chapter. Therefore, please go to Uddhava quickly and convey from us this message to Uddhava. The appointed time today has come to the assembly hall, has already passed. Let me just read that again. The appointed time today to come to the assembly hall has already passed. Kindly bring Krishna and grace the assembly with our Master's presence. So, the idea is that if the Yadavas cannot see Krishna or get to see Krishna, then they're helpless. They just will become incapacitated, unable to function, dysfunctional. Yes. They must see Krishna every day. Otherwise, it's like their lives start falling to pieces. So, and also, there's an implication, a subtle implication here, that they're telling Narada to go there because he's a great devotee, and great devotees can approach Krishna. But they feel that we're not qualified. We cannot approach Krishna, just walk into his quarters to meet him, to meet Uddhava. We can't do that. We're not qualified. But Narada, you're qualified, so you go ahead. So thus ends the 5th chapter of part 1 of Srila Sanatana Goswami's Brihad Bhagavatamrita, entitled Priya, the Beloved. So now we go on to chapter 6. Let's make a start. It is called Priyatama, the most beloved. The most beloved. So it's really something very amazing. Let's just have a look here. So, okay. So Narada Muni is going to go into the quarters to the inner quarters of the palace to find Uddhava. Yes. So first of all, the first section is from verse 1 to verse 11. Narada is going to find Krishna, to find Uddhava and Krishna. Right. Okay, so that's from verse 1 to verse 11. Let's just have a look here. All right, so Narada arrives at Krishna's palace, and there's not much in the way of purports here. I mean, there's a little. So we'll just read straight through. So here we go. First of all, verses 1, 2, and 3 are placed together. Sri Parikshit said, "Noble mother, after hearing Ugrasena's advice, Narada, the dear devotee of Lord Mahavishnu, became absorbed in the taste of exalted love of God, which seized him in its grip. Forgetting everything else, he started off, veena in hand. Having spent much time before in Dwarika," he visits Dwarika, in other words, fairly regularly. Having spent much time before in Dwarika, Narada automatically took the familiar roads to the center of the city, amazing roads that led to the neighborhood of the Lord's palaces. And he came to a palace of Krishna's that he knew how to reach from earlier visits. Under the spell of intense transcendental agitation, Narada seemed like an ordinary person haunted by a ghost. Haribol. Yes, so this is all going to lead up to a discussion about Priyatama, the most beloved. The inhabitants of Dwarika, they are Priya, they are beloved. But who are the most beloved? It's not exactly the inhabitants of Dwarika. It's the Brijbasis. So that's what's going to happen, is that there is what is going to gradually develop is a discussion about Vraja and the inhabitants of Vraja. And in this way, through hearing these discussions from these residents of Dwarika, we are going to be able to appreciate how the Brijbasis are Priyatama, the most beloved, and the actual greatest recipients of the mercy of the Lord. Yes. And we'll see as these talks go on about Vrindavan and the inhabitants of Vrindavan, how Krishna becomes overwhelmed. So, yes. So, when Narada left Hastinapur for Dwarika, all he could think of is how wonderful is Krishna, how wonderful are Krishna's devotees. He picked up his veena, but he was just too absorbed in all of this to play it. So how then, there's a good question here. How did he know how to find his way to Dwarika, and then in Dwarika, as he is now, to find his way to Krishna's palace? This is a good question. And the answer, simple answer, he knew because he'd been there so many times before. He could practically, literally go there with his eyes closed. Yes. And so he took all the right roads without even really paying attention, sort of automatic pilot type of situation. As the road to the inner city approached the royal quarters, it assumed a bewildering appearance and took many unusual turns, making it a road ordinarily impossible for non-residents to follow. Narada seemed oblivious of what he was doing and managed to arrive at his destination only because he was accustomed to that route. Yeah. So, yeah, he seemed like that. The truth is, however, that when one is conducted helplessly under the control of pure love of God, one actually understands everything perfectly. He certainly cannot forget the way to reach the personality of Godhead. All right. So, well, I'll just read the next verse. So this is Narada on his way through the sort of intricate paths to Krishna's quarters, being directed by his love for Krishna. He sometimes tripped and fell to the ground, and sometimes stood motionless. Sometimes his body trembled, or he rolled on the ground, or he wept in great distress. He sometimes shouted and jumped about, sometimes sang and danced, and sometimes all the transformations of priceless love of God converged in him at once. Yes. So this only happens with devotees who are on the highest level. This is essentially Mahabhava. It's essentially Mahabhava, or a type of Mahabhava, or a very close relative of Mahabhava, that that all the symptoms of prema, of that ecstatic love, like trembling perspiration, standing of the bodily hairs on end, crying, even fainting, these types of things. Ultimately, these are symptoms of Mahabhava. Or in the case of Narada, could be like that, but perhaps more likely a relative of Mahabhava. And it's all coming on him simultaneously. Hare Krishna. So we will continue on tomorrow evening. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Sri Brihad Bhagavatamrita ki jai. Srila Sanatana Goswami ki jai. Go Premanande.